Welcome everyone to the remote commission meeting of July 12th, 2021. I'm happy to have you here. The Port of Olympia is working diligently to address the threat posed by COVID-19 to Thurston County, the state of Washington, and the United States. On March 16, 2020, the commission adopted resolution 2020-03 authorizing certain emergency powers in light of the COVID-19 outbreak, including invoking applicable emergency exemptions to the meeting notice requirements and location restrictions of the Open Public Meetings Act. Pursuant to that resolution, the Port of Olympia Commission is conducting today's meeting remotely. The Port is following the guidance from Thurston County Health Department to take all efforts to prevent the spread of this virus and is acting in the interest of the safety and welfare of the public, the community, and our employees to limit its spread. So with that, I'd like to ask Commissioner Zita, if you're situated, would you like to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I'll pass for the moment.
Oh, great. Okay, Zita, no problem. And how about you, Commissioner McGregor? Would you like to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I'd be glad to. Thank you. If you'd please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance to our country's flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Next is our approval of the agenda. Are there any amendments to the agenda? Because I have one, but I'd like to call on my fellow commissioners first.
I have none.
Well, let's hear yours. I have some too.
Thank you. I'd like to amend the agenda as follows. I'd like to move item 3 of the consent calendar, new market lease option amendment. I'd like to move that to the action other calendar. And the reason is that I'm hoping to get just a little bit more explanation from Alan as to some of the dates. Do I have a second for that?
I'll second that for the purpose of discussion. My amendment is to move both items 3 and 4 to advisory. I agree with you, Commissioner Downing, that we need more discussion and information on item 3 and on item 4.
Thank you.
So I completely agree with your, with the spirit of your amendment, that we need more discussion. And I would offer a friendly amendment that item 3 should go to advisory so we can have a fuller discussion. And so should item 4.
So seeing as how those two amendments are materially different, the amendment to move the new market lease option amendment to action other calendar has been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes.
All opposed, nay. Call for a roll call vote.
All opposed, nay. Okay, thank you, Commissioner Zita. So Commissioner Zita, would you like to repeat your motion and then I'll call for a second.
Yes, I move that both items 3 and 4 be moved to advisory. They both need fuller discussion. And we need more information before rubber stamping them under consent or the Panattoni leases, extensions, had hundreds of public comments concerned about this last year. And we owe the voting public and the taxpayers a fuller discussion with full information and a full process, not rubber stamping in consent or action other.
Thank you, Commissioner Zita. So it's been moved to move item 3 and item 4 of the consent calendar to the advisory calendar. Is there a second? Hearing none, motion fails for lack of a second. Now I'll ask for an amendment for a motion to approve the commission meeting agenda as amended with that one amendment of New Market lease option amendment, moving from the consent calendar to the action other calendar. So that's the one approved amendment. So now I'm asking for a motion to approve the overall agenda with that amendment.
Second. Or I'll make the motion.
Motion made and I second it. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay, call for a roll call vote in the minutes.
Very well. So we have an agenda. Thank you, commissioners. Moving on to the executive director report. Our own Sam Gibney.
Great. Thank you. Good evening, commissioners. Can you go to the next slide, please? We are seeking feedback via survey on our Swantown Marine Fueling Station to constantly improve and provide our customers with the best possible service. The survey closes on September 10th at 11:59 p.m. We appreciate your feedback. You can find the survey link at swantownmarina.com. Speaking of Swantown Marine Fueling Station, it recently had its busiest transaction days ever. Both Saturday, July 23rd, 2021 and Saturday, June 20th, 2021 had 52 fuel sales each day. The graph shows January through June of 2021 fuel sales by gallons compared to the same time period for 2020. We are up 32% on total gallons sold compared to last year, which makes 2021 so far our best year since the fuel dock opened. Next slide. And as I mentioned at our last meeting, I'm pleased to welcome Lisa Parks to our port team. Lisa has been hired as our new capital investments, planning and environment programs director. She comes to us with a tremendous wealth of experience, including in the port industry. So today is her first day. So please join me in welcoming aboard Lisa. I attended the Washington Public Port Association Director Seminar on June 7th and 8th. That was just this last week. It was my first in-person conference or meeting of this kind since the pandemic broke out. So it was really great to see people and be in person and have that kind of camaraderie that is built amongst the executive directors across the state and really supported by Washington Public Ports Association. Next slide. We're also pleased to welcome a fleet of small boats at our launch ramp last week. The fleet, including a variety of smaller production sailboats and dozens of home-built sailing and rowing boats, launched the boats at Swantown Marina as they began the Salish 100. Created by the Port Townsend Pocket Yachters Club and now part of the Northwest Maritime Center's family of events, the Salish 100 has joined the Race to Alaska and the 7048 as three of the most unique and vibrant water activities in the Pacific Northwest. Salish 100 consists of more than 135 boats cruising 100 nautical miles, the full length of Puget Sound from Olympia to Port Townsend, Washington. Along the route, the small boat skippers from across the state and other countries will experience everything the Salish Sea has to offer. Next slide. The draft environmental impact statement for Capitol Lake Deschutes Estuary Long-Term Management Project is now available, and there is a link on our front page of our webpage. You can visit Capitol Lake Deschutes Estuary EIS.org and submit your comments by August 13th, 2021. Next slide. And as always, we have several ways for the public to engage with us. Here are some easy ways to contact us, give us feedback, or request a conversation.
Thank you, Sam, for that great report. And I especially enjoyed the, what's it called? The Salish 100.
Mm-hmm.
And I happened to be down there last Thursday night, and a bunch of those folks are all over the boat launch and putting those. And I think that part of the experience is the Q factor, because, you know, all these boats are extremely well cared for and nice. And so it was very cool. Thank you. Felicia, we'd like to get a litigation report from you, please.
I have a question.
Oh, I see. Go ahead, Commissioner Zeta.
Thanks, Executive Director, for that report. You mentioned the uptick in fuel cells at the marina, and that reminds me that Commissioner Downing had asked for a report on the marina fuel station, and I'm wondering, I'm sure that's on the calendar sometime coming up here.
I'd like to respond to that since you mentioned my name, Commissioner Zeta. Port staff told me that in conversation with port staff, they came up with the idea of a fuel dock survey to assess, how well the fuel dock's being received and so on and so forth, and ways to improve it. So I would like to, wait on that survey. So I still am interested in a fuel dock report and evaluation, but I think that a little bit later in the year, perhaps, given where the survey is underway.
What was the timeline you said, Commissioner Downing?
I think our executive director said the survey is open until September 10. So at some point, probably early October, by the time they analyze the results, I think that would be a great addition to that report as well.
That'll be timely for our budget, so we'll have an idea about how that is performing economically compared to the early projections. Thank you.
I have a comment too when it's appropriate.
All right, Commissioner McGregor, please.
I was just curious on the survey, will those that are using the fuel dock, will they be handed some kind of a document so they know where to go to fill it out, or will they fill it out, hand it in, or how is that survey going to be, or do people just need to go to the website, and how are they going to know just to do that?
Yeah, link to the survey was sent out to the Swantown Marina moorage patrons, as well as marina patrons around our area. Commissioner Downey helped us to put us in contact with other boat user groups and so we really tried to distribute that link far and wide. And then yes, people who are coming to the fuel dock will be given the opportunity to and I'm not sure whether it's a piece of paper or whether they actually have something they can fill out right there. I'd have to ask Jenny about that, but we definitely have something set up so that patrons that are coming will be asked if they have already filled out the survey or if they would like to.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So at this time, commissioners, like to move to public comment before and we had 2 folks sign up ahead of time, but before we get any further, I did have a request from Commissioner
Point of
Menser.
order, litigation report.
Oh, I got all confused. I
No
called
worries.
on Felicia, but then we answered questions. So thank you for keeping me on track. Commissioner Zeta, litigation report, Felicia.
Thank you, commissioners. This evening, there is not a litigation report. Thank you.
Oh, that's great news. Great. Anyway, so back to public comment. Commissioner Menser requested 5 minutes instead of the usual 3. So I'd entertain a motion to give all public comment tonight 5 minutes each in the interest of equity, or I'd entertain a motion to honor Commissioner Menser's request for an extra couple minutes. And I believe he wants to talk to us about the 5-person commission. So it's pretty timely information.
Move to honor Commissioner Menser's request for 5 minutes.
Second.
So it's been moved and seconded to make an exception to our policy of 30 minutes and give 5 minutes to Commissioner Menser should he need it. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Thank you, commissioners. So with that, I have 2 folks, Commissioner Menser and former Olympia Mayor Doug Ma, both wanting to speak. So before I call on the general audience, I'm going to ask Commissioner Menser to lead things off.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay? Okay, good.
Yes.
My name is Ty Menser, Chair of the Thurston County Board of County Commissioners. Thanks for the opportunity to address you. I'm not appearing as an individual tonight, but the Board of County Commissioners asked me to appear as chair to represent the views of the board. We understand the port has recently voted to advance a proposal to expand size of the Port Commission from 3 to 5 members. Time is of the essence, so we wanted to weigh in. We thank you for your attention to this issue and commitment to good government to serve all residents of Thurston County. We know the reasoning behind this proposed change is sound. The Board of County Commissioners has carefully considered this very same idea with respect to our board, and all 3 of us have come to the same conclusion. 5 county commissioners would be more democratic, provide better balance, actually enhance efficiency of the board, and overall better serve residents of the county in a variety of ways. So we're behind you, but I'm here to talk about timing tonight. Unlike the port, the county may not put this before the voters until we have official census numbers showing we have passed the 300,000 person threshold. And we're almost there. The last number we got was 295,000, and we have a growing county and new census data just around the corner. And so this is the reason I'm here. This is an important piece of information that we weren't sure that you knew when you made your recent decision. The piece of information is that the Board of County Commissioners is committed to putting an expanded commission before the voters at the earliest possible time, which we anticipate in our case to be 2022. We just wanted to make sure you didn't decide and then say, well, gee, if we only knew the county was planning to do it next year, we would have waited. We wanted to make sure you knew our commitment. Our view is that with the county so close to 300,000 and both commissions committed to a 5-commissioner expansion, we have a unique opportunity to collaborate on this and make a permanent positive change for our citizens. We believe there are a number of advantages to coordinating our efforts and running the required ballot measures at the same time. Of course, election expense is reduced, but more importantly, it increases the opportunity for public education and awareness. This is critically important. It is not immediately apparent to the average citizen why we need more elected officials. The reasons why it does make sense are somewhat detailed, involving Open Public Meetings Act and a whole bunch of other considerations that are a little technical and will require significant education efforts to achieve sufficient public understanding. Moreover, we believe if either of us tries and fails due to lack of public understanding of what the advantages could be for the county, the efforts of the other to successfully educate the public will be significantly diminished. For the port to try to accomplish this kind of major effort prior to November will be difficult no matter what. But if both proposals were before the voters at the same time next year with the unanimous support of all 6 commissioners involved, we believe the public will take the proposals more seriously and are more likely to give them the careful consideration they deserve. Now, we know you have 2 new port commissioners coming aboard next year, but we are confident that if the 6 of us can come to agreement on this, with the variety of political opinions contained within our 2 commissions, then the new port commissioners can be brought on board as well. If the Port Commission is intent to move forward in November without the county, our secondary request is that we come to agreement regarding collaboration on creating district boundaries, assuming the expansion is successful with the voters. I think we can all agree that jurisdictional boundaries are confusing enough for voters without us muddying the waters by creating 2 conflicting sets of 5-commissioner districts. Our legal staff has developed some proposed language. I heard a mention that that might have already been incorporated. If so, thank you. I know Auditor Mary Hall has forwarded you a specific proposed approach for a joint committee that our board is in full agreement with. At a minimum, we ask your support on this component of this process. Finally, third and finally, an issue that was raised by the Auditor Mary Hall and our county manager is that if you moved forward this November and you were successful, district boundaries would need to be finalized by March of 2022 to allow enough time for candidates to file for office by mid-May. That is an extremely aggressive timeline for drawing new boundaries, whether or not you're collaborating with us or not. So we suggest that in any case, you delay election of any new commissioners until 2023 to allow adequate time to draw good, sensible district boundaries in collaboration with the county commission and the county auditor, and allow solid qualified candidates to assess these district changes and step forward to file for office in a timely manner. Thank you for this time. We look forward to working with the port as a partner in this effort to broaden democratic participation and improve government in Thurston County.
Thank you, Commissioner, for your thoughts on this matter. Next, we have former Olympia Mayor Doug Maw. Doug, you have the floor.
Great. Thank you very much, Commissioners. For the record, my name is Doug Maw. I reside on Kinsale Lane, Southeast in Olympia, Washington. And I'm here this evening on behalf of the Thurston Chamber of Commerce. And the Chamber of Commerce strongly encourages the Port of Olympia Port Commission to submit a proposal to the voters to ask whether the number of commissioners and representing the Port District should increase from 3 to 5 commissioners. The Thurston Chamber of Commerce believes that asking the voters approval to increase the number of elected port commissioners is an important, appropriate, and timely request to make. Increasing the number of commissioners and commissioner and districts will better provide a more equal representation for the voters, as well as address a more diverse set of interests regionally. Expanding the number of commissioners will make for a more efficient commission, I believe. Increasing the number of commissioners will enable the commission to establish subcommittees, which are commonly used amongst many city councils and board of trustees and other county commissions. Ultimately, increasing the number of elected commissioners will achieve shared goals around better representation and greater efficiency. I find it interesting and exciting to hear Commissioner Menzer speak about expanding the county commission by 5 to 5 commissioners. I think this is something that perhaps we all need to look into, although it does not change the position of the Thurston County Chamber of Commerce that expanding from a 3-member commission, whether it be port or county, to a 5-member commission is good for the community. It is, again, better, more representative representation on both commissions. And it also will allow you to be a more efficient and effective governing body. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have. If not, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Ma. I appreciate your comments. At this time, we had those 2 gentlemen signed up in advance, and I'm going to ask any of our attendees tonight, does anybody else like to give public comment at this time? You may raise your hand, or that would be best if you could raise your.
We have Robert Wubina.
Oh, Mr. Wubina.
Excuse me, I apologize.
That's fine. I happen to know him, and so I know that I think I've got the pronunciation right. So, Mr. Wubina, go ahead. Perhaps somebody's muted.
There we go. Can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, sorry. Thank you, commissioners. I just want to reiterate support of what Doug Ma just shared with the chamber. In my professional career, I worked with special districts all across the state, all across the Northwest, and invariably with a three commission government, basically, you run into various challenges which you've already observed on. And we've always found that a 5-member commission basically provides more thoughtful leadership, more continuity of leadership. And so as a longtime businessman in the Olympia community, I fully support the idea of going to a 5-commission port district. I'll defer to you guys on working with the county in terms of timing and such, but there's no question that both the county and the port should go to a 5-person commission. So that's all my comments.
Thank you, Mr. Wubina. Anybody else like to give public comment tonight on any issue facing the port?
No other hands at this time.
Okay, last call, public comment. Oh, thank you, everyone. Seeing none, I'm going to turn to commission response. Commissioner Zita, would you like to go first?
I'll let Commissioner McGregor go first.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. Thank you from all of the speakers tonight from both perspectives. I am and have been in favor of a 5-member board for a while, so I was glad to see this finally coming forward. I think that by us moving forward, some of the very things that were stated by all 3 commenters was the representation, and I think that that this is the right time to do it in our year when we can keep election costs reasonable here. I think that even though we know that we are at least number wise have been at 295,600, which was reported by TRPC, there's no guarantee that we're there yet until after the ballot measure would have to be before the auditor's office for to be on the election process. I think it's wise to put this out here and let the citizens decide which way to go. If they decide they don't want a 5-member board, then we are back to where we are, and it hasn't affected anything. Moving forward, if they do agree that we should be in a 5-member board, then there are certain things that have to fall into place. I have no problem working with the county on setting up districts on this. I know that it's going to make it tight, but I think that we owe it to our citizens, if it's approved, to keep moving forward. There's no guarantee. I think that if the citizen or the county gets over 300,000, then I think and I believe they have to put it out for a vote as well. There's no guarantee that would pass and become 5 members. So I think the time is right for us to explore that and to move it forward on the election ballot. So thank you very much for your comments, and thank you, Commissioner Downing.
Thank you, Commissioner McGregor. Commissioner Zeta, do you have any comments to our public speakers, public comment tonight?
It sounds like we all agree that moving to a 5-member commission makes sense at the port and at the county. It sounds like we all agree that it makes sense for the port and the county to cooperate on setting up districts. What we don't agree on is the timing and who's going to pay for this. The port is not the expert. The county is the expert. The county has the auditor's office. The county has the data, and it is the county's job to evaluate our census data and to do the redistricting. I don't know whether either of my fellow commissioners have attended the WPPA trainings on redistricting, but if you have, you will have heard the Washington Public Ports Association tell us that ports like ours should not do redistricting or carry out any redistricting initiatives independently. The Washington Public Ports Association has advised us that we should follow the lead of our county. This is more efficient with taxpayer money, and it is less confusing for the taxpayers. I think we all agree that we want to maximize participation, democracy, and diversity. We want to reduce confusion for the taxpayers, and I hope we all agree that we want to be efficient with taxpayer money. And the way to do this most efficiently is to do as Commissioner Menser recommends. And let me remind my fellow commissioners that Commissioner Menser is speaking on behalf of the full county board when he recommends that we work together on this, that the county commission is committed to moving forward on this, and that we should follow their lead and do this under their guidance next year. I really don't understand what your hurry is, and let's do this right. Let's take the time to do it in collaboration with the county at every step of the way. Let's be good partners with our local experts at the county. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Zeta and Commissioner McGregor. I just have a couple of thoughts on this, and I want to thank our public commenters, Commissioner Menser, Doug Ma, and Bob Ubina. Thank you for coming and talking to us. I did talk to, I'd appreciate Commissioner Zeta if you could, through Sam, send us a link to where you heard that information from the WPPA. I'd like you to know that week before last, I spoke to the WPPA legal counsel personally, and he was nothing but encouraging, but at the same time, hands off. In other words, WPPA does not get in the way of what the legislature and the RCWs have put as the law of our land. And so I'd be surprised if a WPPA would take a position either way. But I do want to inform you that I talked to Mr. Smelik, and he was, very helpful in providing the background. I also incidentally spoke with 3 or 4 other ports that have 5-person commissions. And the other thing I'd like to suggest in response to Commissioner Menser is, it's a big deal when you come and talk to us. So I want to acknowledge that it is a big deal. I happened to see the work session where you discussed this, and your fellow commissioners asked you to come and speak with us and let you know how the commission feels. And I think that's definitely makes an impression. So what I would suggest is that, as you know, we're not making any decision tonight, but I would like to make a motion of my fellow commissioners. So I'm making a motion right now that we ask our executive director to see if she can pull together a meeting next week with the county commissioners so we can talk face to face about what the options are, what our positions are, and what we might be able to collaborate on.
I'll second that with a friendly amendment. The county commission is much busier than we are. We are part-timers, they work full-time. So I agree that we should meet with the county commission at their convenience.
Thank you, Commissioner Zeta. Thank you for your friendly amendment. However, it's pretty mandatory to me that this happen before our next vote. So that only leaves us the balance of this week or next week. So I repeat, I make a move. I make a motion that the Port Commission meet with the County Commission either later this week or next week, depending on what our two executive directors can schedule. Do I have a second?
Bill, you're muted.
Sorry about that. I'll second that. I know they're busy. I know they have much more involvement in many different committees, but I hopefully we could have maybe 30 minutes of their time at some point in time to schedule a joint meeting to have a little further discussion on this matter. So I'll second that.
Well,
Discussion.
unfortunately, I have to revise my motion. So again, I make a motion that we meet with the county commission and Mary Hall sometime in the next 2 weeks, depending on what the two executive directors can schedule for the 7 of us.
Friendly amendment. I move that we have this meeting at the party's convenience, at the county's convenience. I still don't get what your big hurry is, Commissioner Downing. You have yet to explain that.
Thanks, Commissioner Zeta. The hurry is we have a particular timeline in order to vote up or down on this particular decision by August 3rd. So in order the county auditor can pull together the appropriate ballot measure. So we do have a deadline. And I think that giving this subject 3 touches by the Port Commission is extremely valid. And I'm actually trying to give it some more airtime by having a public meeting with the county commission, you know, because they came to us and it's obviously important to them. And if we can't meet, we can't meet. But my motion, again, is to ask our executive director to try to schedule a meeting with the county commission and the county auditor within the next 2 weeks to discuss the 5-person commission.
Call for the question.
So it's been moved and seconded that this commission asks our executive director to schedule a meeting with the county commission and the county auditor within the next 2 weeks to discuss the 5-person commission. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. And that finishes, that's the end of my response to public comment, and commissioners had your response, so thank you very much. Next, we have the consent calendar, which includes approval of minutes of June 7, 2021 work session, the commercial insulation lease assignment, and the New Market ground lease form approval. Do I have a motion to approve the consent calendar?
So moved.
Is there a second? I second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, please say nay.
Nay, call for a roll call vote in the minutes.
Thank you, commissioners. Next, we move to the action other calendar, which we have the New Market lease option amendment. And our own Alan Rowe is presenting Alan, since I requested and got support from the commission to move it to the action other calendar, I wonder if you can talk to us about paragraph 2, extension of option term, paragraph 3, extension of habitat plan completion date, paragraph 4, extension of form ground lease approval period, and paragraph 5, extension of due diligence period. Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. Alan Rowe, Business Development Director and Real Estate Director for the Port of Olympia. Understanding your question is to explain in more detail paragraphs 2 through 5 of the presented second amendment to the option agreement. Essentially, a lot of these terms were administrative, just to essentially clean up where we currently stand based off of the original option agreement that was executed almost a year ago to the day. Originally. Since then, we did have one amendment that was done late September, early October, and now we're proposing the second amendment. What we are doing, just with the additional workload that we've had as far as entitling the properties to proceed forward with development along with habitat conservation plan current progress, we did feel it was necessarily to revise some of these dates. The first one is the extension of the option term that essentially gives us additional year on the original option term date. So previously it was ending in 2030, now it ends in 2031. And again, that was to cover essentially the work that we've done in the past year that's eating up at the clock for both parties. Paragraph 3 relates to the extension of the habitat conservation plan completion date. This reflects just essentially our current progress with our partners at the City of Tumwater and US Fish on the estimated time of when this work would be completed. And we don't feel that we would be meeting the original milestones set forth in the option agreement, and in our sense revising that date accordingly.
So, excuse me, so
yes, Commissioner.
you pushed it out to September 1, 2022. What was it before you pushed it out?
I'm sorry, Commissioner, I don't have that right offhand. I'll
didn't know
note
if it was
it and try to
okay.
loop
Good.
back to you. It was an earlier date
Okay.
than what's presented here. We were essentially allowing for more time for the completion.
Because I recall from the original discussion that we had 2 years to complete the habitat conservation plan. And that was from, I presume, July of 2020 to July of 2022. So we pushed it out a little bit.
Essentially, yes.
I have a question on the same issue, if I may.
Oh, Commissioner Zeta, please.
So Commissioner Downing asked how about the timing. The Habitat Conservation Plan is being pushed out an additional year. Mr. Rowe, you said you didn't feel that the port could meet the original timeline. Can you tell us why?
So essentially the work being done in conjunction with our partners is, along with some delays related to the past COVID pandemic, that work is not meeting the original timeline as expected. The work group did receive comments back for US Fish on the draft, causing revisions that needed to be done with that. And then that still needs to go back to US Fish and go through the NEPA process along with
Can you be a little more
SEPA.
specific?
Commissioner,
Can you be a little more specific?
Commissioner, I don't know how specific you want me to get here.
You got comments back from US Fish.
Correct, and I am not intimately involved with the HCP process, so I don't fully understand what the exact comments were. That's done by a work group that I'm not part of.
Would you please share those with the commission?
I will get with staff and try to provide those to the commission. Yes.
Thank you. Look forward to seeing those.
Okay, let's see. Next up is the extension of formal ground lease approval period. This was originally a rather short period to require the Port Commission along with Panattoni to approve essentially what the template is going to be for the ground leases proceeding forward. Primarily that protects both parties and having a clear understanding of what the exact ground lease terms are going to be under this template document. That was not a top priority item. Shortly after we executed the option agreement, both parties were comfortable extending out that date. This is again back to an administrative item, formally cleaning that up and making sure that all parties are in compliance with our original documented terms. And that is just got approved on the consent agenda tonight. And then lastly, the extension of the due diligence period. This was revised to reflect the work being done with the development agreement that I'll speak to here shortly, along with the original terms related to the completion of the habitat conservation plan. This is essentially, in all fairness, to our other party with Panattoni, of allowing for this due diligence work to be completed to ensure that a project is feasible moving forward on our properties.
Thank you, Alan. Thank you, Alan, for describing that a little bit in everyday language. I appreciate that. Commissioner Zeta.
I want to thank you for your questions, Commissioner Downing. It sounds like there have been quite a number of changes, and it would be so useful for the commission to see a red line version comparing the old version to the new one, so we know exactly what has changed, and we can't tell that with this current version. So
Commissioner Zeta, this is an amendment, so this is the change outlined directly here. So this is the revision of the language in the original option. This is a second amendment to that option outlining what the language is here.
So Commissioner Downing asked questions like, how long was our original agreement? How long was the original HCP? And I agree, those are great questions, and it would be any transparency staff can provide to enable us to see that when we read the package, or better yet, if we could be briefed on these things in a work session, that would be great for fuller information before we're asked to rubber stamp this in consent, or in this case, advisory action other. I noticed that there is a section in there where the port is agreeing to reimburse Panattoni up to $2,500 for fees. Let's go to that section, please.
Yes, and to respond to your past comment, I can provide the original option agreement for reference to those terms.
Great. It would be so useful to see that type of thing right up front.
Well, Commissioner Zeta, I just want to say that what I did was, I think the Second Amendment referenced the fact that the original ground lease agreement was dated July 13th, 2020. So I just went back to the meeting of July 13th, the commission meeting of July 13th, 2020, and I was able to see the original language. I just had the one question about the habitat plan completion date because I didn't see that in the original agreement. So I was, just so you know that I was satisfied with Alan's answers, but you have another question about.
I do. I have a question about page 1. There's a lot of page 1s. The subdivision application section 1, part B, costs and fees, reimbursable costs. The developer may request in writing an option payment credit of up to $2,500 for reimbursable subdivision application costs. So it sounds like they could ask the port to pay $2,500 for their subdivision application costs. Is that what this means?
Yes, that's absolutely correct. The subdivision application is addressed in the option agreement originally. If, ultimately the port is the landowner on the site, this property is not leased at this point. Panattoni therefore does not have the interest in the property beyond the option agreement. So if Panattoni were to make the application on the port's behalf, we could reimburse them up to $2,500 if they requested.
Would that come back to the commission, or is that the type of thing that staff would just approve?
Commissioner, this is in the document right now for approval.
So it wouldn't come back to the commission.
No, Commissioner.
So staff could just approve this without any further commission oversight.
The commission would be, if the commission chose to approve this document tonight, the commission is ultimately approving this.
Well, so Alan, what's magical about $2,500, given the fact that a subdivision application costs much more than that? So is there something magical, or is that boilerplate, or can you comment on that?
So the work deliverables behind a subdivision application is quite extensive and considerably, much larger than this number here we're talking about. This number is reflective on, essentially city counter fees, through the city of Tumwater for the necessarily application. Panattoni is investing, approximately 10 times this amount in the actual work that's required to submit the application.
I have a few other questions, if I may.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
Commissioners, I wanted to just get in there for a second and let you know that Tracy has actually promoted Heather Burgess, our special counsel, who has historically been working on this matter. So she is now a panelist, and she may be able to address some of your questions as well.
Thank you, Felicia. Heather, feel free to jump in if you see the need. Meanwhile, Commissioner Zeta, did you have additional questions?
Yes, I see that there's a reference on, I can't tell what page this is, page 2 of the ground lease, to a 48 cents per square foot lease. Now, I don't have the old one in front of me, but I think that's less than what we approved
No,
last year.
that's the same amount, Commissioner.
Is it? I see there's a reference to an airport master plan in 1996. Is that the last airport master plan we had?
I will let Director Rudolph address that to you at a later time. And then we are currently in the process of starting a new airport master plan.
I think we had, I thought we had one since then. If not, that's a lawful long time between master plans. That's a long time. And I also see 2 references to hazardous substances in one place and toxic, dangerous, and hazardous substance storage license. So we have provisions in here for handling and storage of toxic.
Commissioner, are we discussing the
substances.
amendment to the option here or another document?
No, we're discussing the ground lease. But I'm concerned, is there, we have 2 documents referencing the handlings and storage and or use of toxic, hazardous, and dangerous substances.
I'm going to defer to the president here. This is
we
not the document that
anticipating-
we're discussing.
So you
Well,
don't want
thanks,
to,
Alec. Commissioner Zeta, yeah, I'm not sure what document you're looking at. Tonight, we're talking about the Second Amendment to the option to ground lease, and it's a 2-page document. Are you pulling from that?
for the 3rd time, I'm now looking at the Newmarket ground lease, and on pages, these are so tiny, on pages 24 and 41, there are references to hazardous substances and toxic, dangerous, and hazardous substances. And I hope that I'm not going to be shut down on these questions, because I would like to know what the plans are for handling hazardous, dangerous, and toxic substances at Panattoni.
So can I have a point of order here?
Yep. Okay, sure.
We
What is
have
it?
already discussed, I believe, that contract That is not on the agenda for tonight's discussion. And it's usual wording that is attached to, I believe, all or most leases that we do regarding that subject. So this is not new information to the commission. What is new to the commission is the option for the amendment to the ground lease. So I would like to keep our discussion regarding that and that point alone. So that's my point of order.
And the chair recognizes that point of order and rules that it's properly taken. So Commissioner Zeta, can you confine your comments to these 2 pages that are in the question for this agenda item? Thank you.
My question was about toxic, hazardous, and dangerous substances, but I have just been overruled, so I understand that question will not be addressed.
Thank you, Commissioner. So because this is an action other item, first I'd like to ask for a motion and a second, and then I'm going to open it up for public comment on this one action other item. So is there a motion to take an action on this item?
So moved.
Is there a second? I second. So it's been moved and seconded to approve the new market lease option second amendment. It's been moved and seconded. Is there public comment on this one item? Because it's an action other item, we do entertain public comment.
We have no current hands up.
Seeing no public comment, it's been moved and seconded that the commission approve the second amendment to the ground lease agreement. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, please say nay.
Nay, call for a roll call vote in the minutes.
Thank you, commissioners. Okay, now we're moving to the advisory calendar. And the first item is Resolution 2021-04, 5-member commission ballot measure. And we have our own Felicia Brown presenting.
All right, thank you, Commissioner. Felicia Brown, Port General Counsel, here tonight to give an advisory regarding increasing the number of elected port commissioners. Next slide, please. So we covered in a previous work session that the commission can approve and adopt a resolution that would send this question of whether or not to have 5 elected port commissioners to the voters. A copy of that draft resolution was included in your packet, and you will see that that resolution references the governing state law. It has a request to add the ballot proposition to the next election, and that request is of the Thurston County Auditor. And it also has a copy of the ballot proposition. I have actually edited that resolution, and those changes are tracked and they should be read or at least underlined in the new version that was sent out today. And the reason for that is because, as Commissioner Messner indicated earlier, I've been working with the representatives attorneys from the Thurston County Board of Commissioners and the Thurston County Auditor's Office. And we've added language reflecting the commission's desire to have boundaries that are clear, boundaries that are not confusing to the public, and to the extent that it's possible to work with the other agencies and collaborate on redistricting efforts. Next slide, please. And so, as I mentioned, there's a draft ballot proposition within that resolution. This is a copy of that proposition. And you will see that the question that would go before the voters is, should this proposition be approved? It is a yes or no question, and a simple majority is necessary for the proposition to be approved. Next slide, please. And so that brings us to the question of what happens if the commission approves the resolution? In the event that the commission approves the resolution, the commission would then need to adopt it. And then the commission would certify that the resolution was properly adopted. And this information would be submitted to the Thurston County Auditor by the deadline for the next general election, which is August 3rd. Next slide, please. If the ballot proposition is approved by a majority of the voters, then the commission would be required by statute to redraw the districts. And in drawing the district boundaries, you would have to add a District 4 and a District 5. Each district should have near same populations, and the incumbent commissioners would continue to represent Districts 1, 2, and 3. Newport districts will be part of the next primary and general elections. And there is also a provision in the RCW that provides for the initial term lengths and the staggering of term lengths for the newly elected commissioners for Districts 4 and 5. Those new commissioner term lengths are staggered based on the year in which the election is held, meaning is it an odd year or an even year? And there's also a consideration in the calculation based on the relative number of votes received by the candidates. Next slide, please. And so this slide is meant to illustrate when there are new commissioner districts, when they would be up for election. And so you'll see the potential election years on the left, and then you have what happens if it is an even year, such as 2022 in the first column, or the second column, sorry. And the third column is what happens if the election is in an odd year. So I've used 2023. So essentially, if the election is held in an even year in a port that has 4-year terms, the highest votes gets a 3-year initial term, and the next highest votes gets a 1-year initial term. If the initial election is held in an odd year, so 2023, the highest votes would get a 4-year term, and the next highest would get a 2-year initial term. After these initial terms, the term would default to 4 years in compliance with the RCW because the commissioners here at the Port of Olympia already have 4-year terms. Next slide, please. And so the information on this slide pretty much shows the same information that I had in that grid. I know it can be a bit confusing. I went through the math myself quite a few times and tried to make sure that I was adding up the 4 and the 3 and working within the odd and even year correctly. And so I'm hoping that another view of the future election cycles will highlight that the takeaway is that one of the new districts, either District 4 or District 5, would be up for election in 2023, 2025, 2027, and 2029. And they would be up for election with either commissioners from District 2 and 3 or the commissioner from District 1. Essentially, the election years for new districts would follow the election years for our existing commissioner districts. Next slide, please. So on this slide, we have the anticipated cost. You will see that the ballot proposition election cost that we're discussing whether or not to have the resolution for the proposition go before the voters is a one-time cost that we think is going to be approximately $14,160. The annual cost for 2 commissioners would be about $80,000 a year, and that's for 2. And then the election cost for 2 commissioners, the first year we think would be about $120,000, and then the annualized cost for the election of new commissioners, we think would be about $30,000 additional in the years in which we have to have one of the new districts up for election. Right now, the redistricting efforts and what the data analysis of the data and the process would actually cost us, we do not have any figures or direction there, so that's not yet determined. But overall, you'll see that we tried to pinpoint for the commission tonight what would be a one-time cost, periodic cost, or annual cost. Next slide, please. And at this point, that concludes my presentation, and I can do my best to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Felicia. Commissioners, do you have any questions of Felicia before we go to the discussion of this?
I do not.
Commissioner Zita, I see your hand up. Please go ahead.
Well, Felicia, you did a lot of work on this.
Thank you, Commissioner Zita.
This is pretty complicated, isn't it?
It was more than a notion. It's just the RCW is what you think until you start close reading.
Yeah. So you must have spent a lot of time on this.
I would say that once I figured out where to look in the RCW, I just kind of went from there, but I did get help from staff and just checking my work. So it just was a matter of going through the right RCW and then making sure I understood it.
Yeah. So I'm wondering where that figure of 14,160 came from for the ballot cost. I'm sorry if you said that and I missed it.
No, so actually staff worked with me to give me resources that they used in the past looking into this. And so that actually is something that came, I believe, from projections when we looked into this in the last few months. Sam, would you agree with that?
Yeah, that projection for the 14,160 came directly from the auditor's office. Does have a metaphorical asterisk by it. It is an estimate at this point, but they felt pretty confident in that number.
Thanks for that information. I'd really love to hear from the county auditor on this. And I guess we're not including staff time in these costs, are we?
At this time, I don't have a projection for staff costs, no.
Mhm. Thanks, Felicia.
Thank you, Commissioner. You're very welcome.
Well, commissioners, we talked a little bit about this already in our response to public comment, because this was the singular topic of public comment. However, let's go up around the room, and Commissioner McGregor, Commissioner Zeta, and myself, let's all give some thoughts to this. Any comments? Bill? Commissioner McGregor?
No, I've followed what Felicia has presented tonight, and I'm comfortable with hearing public comment on this at this point. Thank you. Once we get through the other two items. So.
How about you, Commissioner Zeta?
Well, as we discussed before, I think everyone agrees that 5 commissioners is a good idea. It's more democratic. It has better balance. It can better serve our county. But I agree strongly with our county commissioners and with our county auditor that we should work together on this and not put it before the voters until we can do it together. I think that County Commissioner Menser raised a really good point. Apart from the confusion that voters may experience if we do it independently, and the additional expense, which we don't know what all the expenses will be, as Commissioner Menser said, if we try to do this and it fails due to lack of public understanding, and we are not the experts on communicating this, then not only do we lose, but the county loses. And we want this to succeed. And we can succeed better if we do it with the county. For the port to accomplish this before November will be difficult. And if it goes before the voters next year, with all of our support, it has a better chance to succeed.
Thanks, commissioners. My comments are these. It's encouraging that everybody thinks it's a great idea. That's encouraging. I lived in Olympia for 15 years. I know there was an effort at something called, what was it called? Home rule. And so there's been efforts in the past to turn the county commission to a larger board. I'm not sure if 5 was the number. However, we've arrived at this juncture. We have the RCW as our guiding light, and our legislators put that RCW together over the years and modified it. But we have a whole chapter talking about port districts and how they work and election cycles and how many commissioners and so on. And it's totally within our purview to move this forward. And I submit an interesting case that, it could go 3 ways, any of 3 ways. Either the Port Commission passes, then the county does not, or the Port Commission does not and the county does, or we go together and both pass or both fail. So there's many scenarios. It's hard to predict, because we don't have pollsters on board, but it's hard to predict, how the voter feels and so forth. And I've brought this forward because I think we're at a unique spot in our port's history whereby this idea will gain traction from the voters. I can't really speak about the county commission and what's going to gain traction with the voters for the county. However, that being said, I mean, I'm so excited that you approved meeting with the county commissioners, because we can hash out a few things and get a little bit more information. And this is one of those rare opportunities where we need to put our heads together and come up with something good. And I'm not sure, I'm not going to try to predict what that might be, but I just think that it's good for the Port of Olympia, and timing is important. And I do believe that this is the right time. We've been together a few years, and we have that perspective. So. Okay. Well, thank you, Felicia, for presenting that to us tonight. That was very good, very informative. Going to go ahead and move on to the Juneteenth holiday, and our own Jerry Sevier is presenting.
Good evening, commissioners. I brought this to you at a work session, but was asked to bring it back as an advisory and then action. And so tonight we'll be talking about the June 13th as a port holiday. Next slide, please. A little bit of background. Our port holiday policy is 312, and it states that our legal holidays are observed by the Port of Olympia. The paid holidays recognized by the port are the same holidays that are recognized by the state of Washington. This last legislative session, Governor Jay Inslee declared Juneteenth as a paid state holiday by signing House Bill 1016 into law, making June 19th a paid holiday off for state workers effective next year in 2022. Next slide, please. Juneteenth is also known as Emancipation Day and Freedom Day, and this marks the day when the Union soldiers arrived in Galveston, Texas in 1865 and informed the last enslaved African Americans that they were free. Juneteenth is a holiday that celebrates the emancipation of those who have been enslaved in the United States. And Washington is one of 47 states that recognizes Juneteenth as a holiday. It was previously not a paid off, just a recognized holiday. And Texas was the first state to officially recognize it, Juneteenth as a holiday in 1980. Washington did so in 2007. But again, at that point, it was just a recognized holiday and now is recognized as a paid holiday. Next slide, please. So our port policy has followed the state government holidays, but our port policy doesn't specifically indicate a reference to that RCW. So our policy would need to be updated to include the additional holiday, June 19th, as a port holiday starting in 2022. Our port policy doesn't reference the RCW on purpose. Next slide, please. Specifically because that RCW gives state employees an additional paid holiday of their choice. And the port has built that additional holiday into our leave system, so we don't have a separate holiday. And I wanted to just point out that the loaded cost to the Port of Olympia is approximately $20,000 annually. Next slide, please. So staff's recommending that the commission formally adopt Juneteenth as a Port of Olympia paid holiday to celebrate the resiliency and spirit of Black Americans, reminding us of our country's past moral failures alongside a persistent hope for a more equitable future. And those are in the words of Governor Jay Inslee. Staff will bring this back as action at the July 26th meeting to ask the commission to make a motion to change the port policy 312 to include Juneteenth as a paid holiday and would be effective next year of 2022. Next slide, please. I am available to answer any questions you might have.
Thanks, Jerry, for that presentation. Commissioners, do you have any questions of Jerry or comments?
No, I just want to thank Jerry for bringing it forward. And so on the 26th of this month, we'll be taking formal action if we so desire to declare Juneteenth as a paid holiday officially in the port holiday schedule. And we'll be updating that policy, and I'm glad to see that happen. And thank you for bringing it forward, researching it, and giving us a little history on that as it relates to not only what we've done, but what other states such as Texas began the process. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Jerry, for doing this work. This is our second presentation we've heard from you. This is an easy thing for us to approve. I wish we had approved it the first time you presented it to us. I don't know why we need to go through 3 meetings to approve this when we will approve something as controversial as Panattoni lease amendments without even a work session, but be good to get this one done. This is a good one.
Thank you, commissioners, and I echo my fellow commissioners' comments. I'm so happy to see this Juneteenth holiday come to fruition. It's important to remember our history and where we came from and what it took to get us here, and the good things and the bad things all together makes us who we are. So thank you for that presentation, Jerry. Look forward to it.
Thank
Next,
you.
we're
I'll
gonna-
see you back on the 26th.
Thank you. Next, we're going to move on to the third advisory calendar item, which is called the New Market Development Agreement and Interlocal Agreement with the City of Tumwater, and our own Alan Rowe presenting.
Hello again, commissioners. I'm here to present to you really results of work that we've done since the first option amendment that was executed last October. And if you remember, this was essentially to direct port staff to work with the City of Tumwater on developing terms for a development agreement to address concerns that we heard through the approval process, along with provide for some certainty to our developer to move forward in marketing these properties. What we have before you tonight is essentially an outline of the terms for a development agreement that we would like to discuss with the City of Tumwater and Tumwater Council for them to hear it. And ultimately tonight wanted to brief you on what those terms would be and answer any questions as this moves forward through a process. I'm not certain if you can see my presentation right now.
Yes. Yep.
You can.
See it.
Okay. I'm sorry, I'm not seeing it on my. Let's see. Okay, so background on the option agreement that we have is this was approved, like I said earlier, on July 13th of last year. This was for 200 acres in what's known as the New Market Industrial Campus, the area west of the Olympia Airport that the port owns. And as I mentioned, the commission directed us on 9/28 on first read to work with city staff to ultimately memorialize a way to address the concerns heard and provide for that certainty with our developer moving forward. We've been very pleased with the work that we've been able to do with city staff in conjunction with these efforts, and feel we've really come up with a solid product to address everything that we've heard. Next slide, please. This is, again, just to refresh you, this is ultimately the area that is within the option agreement. This is what's representative of approximately 200 acres. Most of the area is west of Center Street, surrounding the bus garage. Currently the DePaul Log Yard is not part of the option agreement, but within the option agreement, there is essentially a right of first refusal for Panattoni to take additional land under their option agreement if it were to become available. Right now, this property is under lease, yet is set to expire possibly in a couple of years. Existing conditions right now is we are working to really plan an area, again, to provide illustration on examples of what potential development could look like, along with how we would address some concerns that we heard that I'll get into here in a little bit. We took an overall planning area, again, that was focused on that west of Center Street area, and also encompass the log yard as well for possible future development. Next slide. What we've got with the option proposal is, again, all of that development was consistent with current code. The option agreement with Panattoni is for a period of approximately 10 years. As part of that option agreement, we agreed that we would work move forward on an agreed upon lease template that was just accomplished tonight. And those terms were for 55 years plus option periods. Panattoni is required to take down a minimum of 10 acres at each time they execute a lease. The allowed uses were for commercial, business park, and light industrial. And then again, the port was to complete its efforts in conjunction with the city of Tumwater on the HCP within 2 years, which again, we revised that date tonight as well, just by a little bit. Next slide. So some of the big concerns, and I realize we heard a lot of them, but some of the key points that we heard in these public comment period by the public, along with also city council staff at the city of Tumwater, was their concerns for truck traffic. The truck traffic could possibly extend down to the south and past Bush Middle School. We heard concerns about potential tree taking in the area. There were not necessarily a concern, but there were individuals that wanted to see additional community benefit to this development and potential for including things like multi-use trails that could easily be incorporated in there. As these discussions progressed, there was also comments from the city of Tumwater that they would really like the port and Panattoni to be a partner in the community and be able to facilitate some property for a future community center. In addition, we heard some concerns for potential historic unsuitable materials that were in the area. I am not going to go on record to say that we actually have those, but there were concerns that there was some in the area. Next slide. So going forward and taking all of those, we really wanted to provide an illustration, not necessarily to lock us into a master plan, but provide a visual concept that what could be done in this area. And we worked with Panattoni at providing the layout plan that you see here. It really looks to address all of those issues that I just listed out. We did want to propose a development agreement to memorialize this, and that's gives vesting rights for 20 years. That vesting is for current code and things that are actually you can actually vest. There are some issues related to environmental codes that you cannot vest. Those will ever change along with fees. So all development has been consistent with existing Tumwater code. Through the illustration, you'll see to the right, essentially what we provided for was internal circulation to the development. What this means is there's really only one way in through multiple points, but also one way back out to Center Street and then ultimately to the north. What the illustration provides for too is the termination of Kimmy Street. So trucks cannot exit this development and go south past Bush Middle School. It's one of the concerns that we heard. We really focused again back on the school and also with the concerns that we heard about tree taking and the need for retaining a significant amount of trees. We were able to provide for a large tree retention area surrounding Bush Middle School, as you can see just north of the school. The school's pictured at the very bottom south end of the illustration. In addition to that, we've got multiple tree retention areas throughout the development campus, along with another area to the north between the existing hotels and potential development. And then there was screening provided around the buildings internally, along with screening going down Center Street as well. The yellow dashed line is a depiction of where a multi-use trail would be added, and that's between the development and Interstate 5. The total length of this trail that's illustrated here with a connection up to Tumwater Boulevard and down to Kimmy Street is approximately 1.5 miles. So that would be an added benefit for the users within the development, the employees, other workforce, along with community members and your other workforce that's in the surrounding state buildings. There was key to promote and work with our partners at Secretary of State as well. This is immediately adjacent on the north side of the development, and it's illustrated here up in the upper right. That would be adjacent to the Panattoni development and at the corner of Center and Tumwater Boulevard. As I said, one of the items that came out of this was the community center property. We were able to find a location that was within the Panattoni option area. The city of Tumwater expressed an interest in approximately 10 acres. We did find conveniently this parcel, which is about 9.6 acres, so really close to the 10-acre request that they had. And then also there's some other things as far as we've worked on this option and since it's been approved, one of our existing tenants, International Wood Products, IWP, has come to us and said, essentially they would like to double their footprint within the port and add an additional 10 acres. The surrounding property was all under option with Panattoni, but Panattoni engaged with IWP, identified a site down there adjacent to their location, and was able to provide for a site which equaled the 10 acres that they needed. In addition to that, it was still able to provide tree retention areas to the south and to the west between Bush Middle School. And then lastly, a commitment to address any unsuitable materials if they were to be found through our geotechnical investigations done throughout the site. Next slide. One of the feedbacks that we have heard early on was the location of this community center property. The city of Tumwater ideally would like to see this more in a prominent site off of Tumwater Boulevard, and ideally right there at Tumwater and Litterson, where we have the former Tank Farm site. They like the visibility along with some other adjacent property that the port does not own that would not have the residential restrictions to the property like the port has on its properties. We would love to provide a site that 100% meets the needs of the city of Tumwater, but we do have some challenges as well. First off is we had to locate this within the option area that Panattoni has. This property was the only property east of Center Street that was within the option agreement. This property really, as you walk this all the way through, it would be provided to the city of Tumwater through a lease from Panattoni and not from the Port of Olympia. This is a port property and ultimately a port property that falls within the jurisdiction of the airport layout plan and FAA jurisdiction, and we're required to get fair market value through this. By incorporating it within the Panattoni option and linking it to the lease of 100 acres, that was able to provide through an economies of scale a discount rate to achieve our 48 cents per square foot. But by applying that discount, it was allowing us to lease this property for essentially the same rate to Panattoni to then provide a lease to the city of Tumwater. The other challenge that the Linderson and Tumwater Boulevard site has is it does have approximately a 50% higher value. We go from 48 cents a foot up to 72 cents a square foot for lease rates on the properties right off of Tumwater Boulevard. And then ultimately, at the end of the day, we believe that we can provide a real attractive gateway from Tumwater Boulevard down Center Street to this location, just through the corridor area, but also through focused marketing efforts of the site to the north of that, along with what we believe is going to be a real beautiful building that the Secretary of State will be constructing at the corner of Tumwater Boulevard and Center also. Next slide. In addition to the conceptual site layout plan, we also, through Panattoni, had some renderings done of really what that screening would look like with the tree corridors down Center, and then ultimately the building development outside of that corridor, along with the scale of your roads and your sidewalk improvements that are done there. Next slide. And then here's just a further enhancement of that illustration. This is actually looking down Center Street from Tumwater Boulevard. The community center property would be there on your left. Panatoni development would be located on your right, and it gets you a better feel of what that corridor would be like with the screening along with the building development. And we feel we can really provide an attractive space and really an attractive gateway going back to that property. Next slide. As part of this process and just some things we wanted to share, we did do a refined economic impact analysis for the potential development. Originally, we just looked at a flat acreage amount and what that could translate into. This time, now that we have a more refined consensual layout plan, they took the actual buildings, building square footage, and really what that could potentially translate in terms of jobs and wages, along with the economic production. You know, we do acknowledge that this ranges because we don't know exactly what could, you know, what company could potentially come in there. But they did take statistical numbers and provided us a range that we felt would be appropriate based off of potential development. Next slides. These numbers are a little bit easier to really make solid in terms of what your impacts can be from the actual construction of buildings. And this outlines the various jurisdictions that are recipients of sales tax revenues and what the build out of the site would be for that. Next slide. And then property tax annual estimates as well. We did this originally just by basing an average per acre assessment for development within Lacey. This was then refined as well by a third party and supported some of our original numbers that we presented last year. You know, there were some concerns early on in this process that we would just be building warehouse distribution centers out in the Newmarket Industrial Campus. Currently, we know Panatoni, our developer, is working with a nationwide global company that has an interest in siting a manufacturing facility, and one of these sites has been proposed. You know, this would have over half of the facility being manufacturing, and then naturally they store what they manufacture, and the other half of the building would be for the storing and warehousing and distribution of that product. In addition, we've had a gopher survey done on this location and currently have found no gopher impacts. So this area potentially would not be subject to HCP delays, and we could proceed forward and seeing that, you know, economic development opportunities and impacts that really we're envisioning out there. Next slide. Looking forward as far as what the next steps are in this development agreement, which would also be presented under an interlocal agreement with the city of Tumwater. We have advisory today. Tumwater City Council has this on discussion and presentation for tomorrow. We'd like to incorporate any feedback received from that, memorialize that into a final draft, final document for this, and present it back to our commission and then the city of Tumwater, their council body, for hearing and action at a later date, possibly in August or September. Next slide. That's all I have for you. We also have Heather and Felicia that can really answer any technical questions related to the actual documents.
Thanks, Alan. It's a good presentation. Wow, a lot of good information in there. Commissioners, would you like to, do you have any questions of Alan or anything to discuss?
I have a couple of questions. Can we go back to slide 6? A question on that. I think slide 6. Yeah, I think that one will do. So in there, you have kind of the beige building site locations, and you have the bus lot right there that is not part of the development because it's already in place by the school district. And what I don't see, and maybe it's there, but I don't see, is how do the buses get from there to the school? If the main road, do they come back out to Center Street and go around that way? Just what is the thinking there, if you could highlight that?
Right. Currently, the buses exit to the west to Kimmy and then proceed down south. This illustration provides for utilizing that exit then to the east and connecting in within the circulation and exiting out onto Center Street to the east also.
Okay, and so then the other question I have is IWP is currently occupying, we're about approximately building, I don't know if it's C or G, along the freeway there, and then a building H in that area. And they have a current lease. So those buildings are futuristic, that if IWP then elects not to renew a lease in a couple of years or move somewhere else or whatever, then they would still use Kimmy Road but go to the north. Is that correct?
I believe
for their truck traffic.
Commissioner, I'm going to pause on that. I think Executive Director Gibney had also a response to the bus garage question.
Okay, I can't see her, so go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Alan, and thank you, Commissioner. Yes, and just, you know, I have met with Tumwater School District staff, including their superintendent, as well as their facilities manager, specifically about the bus barn and their needs. So they're well aware of the proposal here, and we'll work with them and to configure that traffic in the way that best works for them. But they're very comfortable with what we're showing now with the rerouting of their traffic to Center Street. They think that will work just fine operationally. And just I've also made a presentation to the Tumwater School District Board this last week, and so they are aware of the details of the proposal as well, and understand that their staff has been working with us on any type of operational issues, and in particular they were appreciative of the tree retention area providing some buffer. Really our detail to looking at how the traffic would be rerouted, and especially appreciative of the additional tax revenue that they would see as this area builds out.
Okay, then my last comment then is that IWP, if they elect to expand their business and add another 10 acres, that would be that lease then would be with Panattoni, not with the port, because Panattoni then has the option on that portion of the property. Is that a correct assumption?
Correct, and I will loop back also to your original question regarding the building H, building G location and the potential impact to our tenant there. So this would be our tenant not being under lease with the port anymore after their term ends, and what conceptual development would look like in that location in the log yard area for that tenant. And then regarding IWP, correct. You know, Panattoni, I think, just being a great partner with us, engaged early on and simply said, you know, yes, it's an option area. We're obligated to provide them a lease. We will provide them a lease essentially at a pass-through, you know, with conditions that the port would assume after assignment that lease in the event that the project was not deemed feasible for Panattoni. So in short answer, yes, that would be a lease with Panattoni and IWP.
Okay, so the EDC uses the terms recruit, retain, and expand. And so Panattoni would be recruiting people into this area, but they're also willing to work with our existing tenant, IWP, to expand and retain them as a viable business out in that area for the foreseeable future.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. That's it.
Thank you, Commissioner McGregor, and Commissioner Zita, I recognize you, please.
Thanks for that presentation, Alan, and I want to thank you for bringing this to us as advisory and not action at this point, since this is our first briefing. I think Commissioner McGregor must have a better copy of these maps than I do, because I am looking at that little map on page 6 and it is really hard to read the building labels. So I formally request all available documentation be sent to the full commission, including the draft ILA and all maps, so that we can actually review what's being looked at, and so we can have legible maps. Is that possible?
Yes, Commissioner, I can send you the graphics from the presentation here directly to you.
The graphics and the documentation. We have not seen, the full commission has not seen the draft ILA, but I believe it exists since Commissioner Downing referenced it in a letter to the editor several months ago, and you are referencing it. So we would benefit from actually seeing the document that you're talking about. The bullet points are an approximation to the document, but there is really no substitute for seeing the actual documents. So I'm glad the Commissioner McGregor, can I have your assurance that we will see those documents?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely, Commissioner.
So those will be emailed to the full commission.
Absolutely.
Great. Really sorry we were not provided with those in advance of this meeting, and I'm really sorry we did not have the opportunity to discuss this at a work session, but advisory is absolutely better than action. You said that the planning area extends beyond the initial lease option area. So what are the total acres in the planning area?
I want to say there's probably 220 acres, just trying to go off my head of what the log yard area with our current tenant is. So essentially the planning area did incorporate the log yard area just for long-term future planning. That said, it also excludes, essentially the 9.6 acres that the community center property would essentially occupy.
So you're talking about the DePaul log yard on the west side of Kimmy Street?
Correct.
Okay. On slide 5, you mentioned a minimum 10-acre takedown. Can you tell me what you mean by takedown?
Yeah, so takedowns, I'm sorry, just kind of more of an industry term for acquiring a lease with the port. So executing a lease with the Port of Olympia would be a takedown. Yeah.
So they've already got a 200-acre lease option. So when you say takedown, you don't mean actual development, you mean executing a lease after having gotten the lease option.
Yeah, so they have a lease option in place with us. That lease option requires any future leases because they do not have a land lease with the port, just the option to lease. So any future leases cannot be any less than 10 acres.
Okay, I was envisioning takedown to be clearing and paving, which takes us to slide 6, the map. And in one of your slides, you said that trees will be retained and added, but in slide 6, it looks like most of the trees will be gone, and there will be some fringes of trees retained or added between the cleared areas. So when you say trees will be retained and added, you don't mean that there will be as many trees or more trees than there were before.
So
You mean that some trees will be retained, some trees will be added, but most of the trees will be gone.
no, Commissioner, that's incorrect. The current Tumwater ordinances require a 1-to-1 mitigation requirement. So trees that will be taken would be replaced. And also there is a minimum retention requirement as well within existing tree ordinances that the city of Tumwater has.
Well, that seems, you've got a great big building. I can't read the number, but the letter, but it's right up at the top there where Kimmy turns into 76th, building B. That whole area is mature forest. And I don't know how you can have that building there and retain those trees. That seems like a physical impossibility.
So we retain trees in areas, and we mitigate by adding trees in other areas to ultimately have the same net count of trees that are larger than a 6-inch caliber.
And are the other areas where you're proposing to add trees in this lease option area? Because it just doesn't seem physically possible that you can put that many trees in here.
So the density of any trees out there is, not a high density as it is. Our tree counts per acre are quite light, so you have the room to increase the density for the mitigated trees out there and still retain the same amount of trees.
I see. So when you have a mature forest with trunks of 3 to 4 feet in diameter, that is, of course, a low density. And if you replace those with little trees, that can be a higher density, and that's how you make it work.
We do not have trees at large.
You absolutely do. You should walk through the forest on the corner of Kimmy and 76th. We absolutely do. That is a healthy, mature forest.
Yes, Commissioner, I have visited the site out there.
Let's see. So the community center on the east side of Center Street, I understand that's not the ideal location that the city wanted it. And remind us, please, why we are required to provide some land to the city of Tumwater.
Commissioner, we aren't required to provide this land. This was an opportunity that we explored to try to meet the community enhancements that the city of Tumwater would really like to see out there with this development. So working with the city, working with Panattoni, this is what we were able to, come up with. Ultimately, it's not ideal in terms of the location, but we were proud that we were able to achieve a site that we could present to them for their consideration.
So I was informed that we are required to provide a certain portion or set aside a certain proportion for the city, and agreed that this is not an ideal location, partly because it is further south than the other city facilities, and also because the north end of the proposed community center is currently mature forest, and the south end has gophers on it.
So there is not a requirement that we provide the city of Tumwater property. And this was the best site that we could present to them, realizing there's gopher impacts, just like there's gopher impacts on the entire development that we'll be addressing through the HCP. And that's the same on the community center property as well, along with any tree impacts would also, I imagine, meet the same tree ordinance requirements that the city of Tumwater has for themselves.
So out of the goodness of our heart, because we're good citizens, we're going to give them this gopher property in a place they don't really want. Got it. Unsuitable materials. Tell us about unsuitable materials in this site.
So there was concerns raised, including concerns that we had heard from you, Commissioner Zita, about potential unsuitable materials or former log yard debris in this location. And we want to provide assurance that, we have geotechnical investigations done out on the site to explore the sites for site development and having suitable foundation type material for the development out there. This would be addressed during construction and development of any site out there.
So you don't need to rely on my personal information. If you look at the draft master plan, which was finished in 2015 with TRPC and SCJ Alliance, you will find that their geotechnical experts discovered many acres covered with a thick sheet of plastic on the east side of Kimmy Street from former log yard activities. You don't have to take my word for it. That's all in the master plan geotechnical report.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, we're going to rely on geotechnical investigations that are current and for sure address anything found that's not suitable for development.
Well, you don't need to reinvent the wheel. I am confident that no one has removed that plastic. In fact, you can go to SCJ Alliance and their consultants, and they will be able to tell you exactly what's there without having to redo that whole analysis. Vesting for 20 years. You propose that Panattoni will be vested for 20 years. What do they pay for that privilege?
Panattoni won't directly be vested for 20 years. The Port of Olympia will be vested for 20 years. So in the event that we don't have a relationship with Panattoni after 10 years, the Port of Olympia can work with another developer or for ourselves and still have those vesting rights available to us.
So we would have this vesting with Tumwater. Is that the proposal?
Correct. Under the interlocal agreement and development agreement, that's where the vesting rights come into place. And that's for vesting rights of current codes that you can vest. And, you know, it's existing. We're not asking for any alteration of current code.
That's a pretty big ask, 20 years. Multi-use trail. You said something about a multi-use trail. It's not clear to me where that is. Is this along Center Street, the yellow dots on that map?
So there's yellow dots between the development and Interstate 5 running north and south. The multi-use trail would be in this location. And then there will be your typical sidewalk enhancements.
I'm trying to find out which yellow dots you're talking about.
So yellow dots between the development area and Interstate 5. So essentially, if you parallel Interstate 5 on the map, you'll see those yellow dots.
I'm looking for that. Can you show me which slide they're on?
Let's see. You can first see them right there on slide 6.
So right along, let's see. It's just so tiny. Oh, now you're showing that along Center Street.
No, you see the larger yellow dashed line.
You mean the orange one?
Orange, sure.
So right along I-5?
Correct.
So where's Kimmy Street on here?
So Kimmy Street is essentially terminated at the end of Bush Middle School on this illustration.
It's really hard to tell. Is that orange line going along Kimmy Street? Those orange dots along Kimmy Street?
Those orange lines would be west of the current Kimmy Street.
Oh, so you're gonna build the multi-use trail over in the swamp. Okay. It gets really wet out there. Good luck.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner.
Let's see. So you were saying fair market value is 72 cents per square foot?
No, fair market value on sites off of Tumwater Boulevard are closer to 72 cents a square foot. That's at an 8% capitalization rate. Figures for this area for more the industrial properties south off of Tumwater Boulevard come in at a $6 a square foot valuation with an 8% capitalization rate. That's how we get our 48 cents a square foot.
Okay, you showed an economic impact analysis. I don't suppose you've done any cost analysis or economic benefit analysis. We were presented with some of those figures in the public comment period last year. For example, the trees on that site provide approximately $2 million per year in ecosystem services, not including carbon sequestration. I don't suppose any of that has been included in your analysis.
I haven't seen a professional analysis done that supports those figures.
Uh-huh. And the economic impact analysis that you provided, it sounds like they are not including the fact that warehouses are exempt from building occupancy and use taxes.
So there's I believe that's incorrect. So some of the B&O tax exemptions that you cite, mostly those come from the Department of Commerce for manufacturing facilities and don't necessarily provide benefit to warehouse distribution facilities. That said, it's in the whole picture, it's a little bit more insignificant. We're citing sales tax figures that they would be subject to for this development.
So the building occupancy and use tax exemptions have not been taken into consideration in your economic analyses.
So all numbers that we presented would be realized through the development of buildings out there. So there would be no exemptions available to essentially reduce those figures provided.
Building E, you said will be manufacturing. What will it be manufacturing?
So building E site is currently being marketed by our developer. Beyond that, I can't share any details related to it, other than it would be a manufacturing facility with over 50% of it being dedicated to manufacturing.
Is it that you don't know or that you can't tell us?
Let's see, I know, I'm not going to share it in a public setting right now, and I have no documentation on it.
Okay, I'm really curious to know what else we're not being told. And I'm looking forward to getting the information in writing, in email. Thank
Yes,
you.
and I can tell you related to that development, if our developer was successful in obtaining the contract for developing that facility for the said manufacturer, a ground lease would be presented to the commission with disclosure of what that facility is.
So I look forward to receiving fuller information tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you, Commissioners McGarger and Zeta, for your questions. My comments are perhaps a little bit shorter. I want to thank you, Alan, for this presentation and laying out some of the opportunities, both for the city of Tumwater as well as the port. A lot of good things in here. Less truck traffic, trees retained and added, multi-use trail, Secretary of State site still supported, and especially the community center. I will be extremely proud down the road 4 or 5 years to drive down that street and see a community center for the city of Tumwater sitting there. It'll just be wonderful. So, and the purpose of the port, working with the city of Tumwater, is for us to come to a mutually beneficial working relationship. And so the port is doing things above and beyond whatever zoning is required, because we're already meeting all zoning for that particular locale. Also very excited to hear about manufacturing jobs coming into the area. When this is all built out, you talk about somewhere in the neighborhood of 2,000 direct jobs, 130 million in wages, 1.6 million a year to the school district. That's really, really, really good for Tumwater, as well as the community benefits. So I see a lot of good things about this, and I want to thank staff for working with Panattoni and the city of Tumwater. I anxiously await further word. Obviously, the interlocal agreement is not in the bank yet, and it hasn't come back before us. You know, the original draft of the interlocal agreement was presented to the commission months and months ago. So I was able to, you know, I have a good understanding of, you know, what the port is offering in that, as well as this presentation tonight. So thank you for that. With that, I'm going to turn to public comment. Public comment on our advisory calendar. We talked about a 5-member commission ballot measure. We talked about the Juneteenth holiday, and we talked about an interlocal agreement with the city of Tumwater over the new market development agreement. So at this time, I'd like to welcome public comment, if there is any.
We have a comment from John Cezanne.
Great. Hello, Mr. Cezanne, please go ahead.
Hi. Yeah, I have a comment about the expansion of the commission to 5. I thought that Commissioner Menser made a really strong argument to work together with the port on getting that done. And then I basically just have a question. So Commissioner Downing mentioned that he thought this was the right time, but I didn't hear any explanation of what is the rush and why is this so urgent to do that on this coming ballot? Why can't we wait? And especially with the, all the redistricting issues that would come up between, having to do, create these new districts. It seems logical that, we want the commission district and the port district to be on the same, be the same. And it just makes sense that if the public were to vote for this, that, the two could work together to get that accomplished. So that's my comment. And I'd like to hear from Commissioner Downing why he is so urgent on this.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Cezanne. I'll, of course, respond to you after we're done with public comment. Is there anybody else that'd like to give public comment on any of the 3 advisory items that we talked about tonight? Anybody else wanting to give public comment on the advisory calendar tonight? The 5-member Port Commission, the Juneteenth holiday, or the interlocal agreement with the city of Tumwater?
We have no other hands at this time.
Well, thank you, members of the public. And I think I'll just go ahead and go first and commission response to public comment if my fellow commissioners don't mind, because I was addressed directly by Mr. Cezanne. So what's the rush? In my opinion, Mr. Cezanne, I'm not feeling rushed. I've been a commissioner for 5.5 years. I'm about to go through my second majority turnover of the Port Commission. And as I said in a letter to some folks recently, that creates a lot of upheaval for staff. That creates a lot of lack of continuity. And we're here to be efficient and get things done for the community. So that kind of gets in the way when we have a lot of turnover at the Port Commission level. In addition, with 5 commissioners, 2 commissioners can get together and talk over issues or act as a subcommittee on a project. And that's invaluable as well for the port efficiency. So there's a lot of good reasons. I don't feel like it's rushed, but obviously as when the county commissioner first hears about it, they think it's quote unquote all of a sudden, when really it's been germinating inside my head for at least a year. And I do not feel it's rushed. Obviously, we're up against a deadline in terms of trying to make it on the ballot, because perhaps the easy part is 2 out of the 3 commissioners or 3 out of the 3 agreeing to move forward with a 5-person commission. But the hard part is, getting it past the voters. So the voters are in a unique position to look at the Port Commission. Lord knows we've been in the newspaper more than our share, given the impact on the county, and they can decide for themselves if this is appropriate. I also feel that the Port Commission can be a good test case for going to 5 commissioners, because it's, in the grand scheme of things, it's pretty a low budget request. And the average commissioner makes, I don't know, round numbers, $15,000 in salary per year and $15,000 in benefits. It's very round numbers. So we're talking about $30,000 per commissioner, multiplied times 2 for 2 commissioners. It's really important not to make bad decisions at the commission level. And I just think we'd have more balance, more good discussion, much more continuity and much more representation of the whole county. Remember, we're called the Port of Olympia. And I remember from my campaigning days, it's very hard to be in Tenino or Yelm and be talking about the Port of Olympia because they don't feel that represented by this port. So I think that it's a move towards democracy, a move for the people to have a voice, more of a voice in their government. And you could say that we're the trendsetters. But I am committed to working with the county commission. That's why I asked for a special session with them in the near future so we could hammer out whatever we can hammer out. I think there's no harm in talking. I appreciate your comments. I hope I've answered your question. Commissioner Zeta or McGregor, do you have any comments to our one public commenter tonight?
Well, thanks for your question, Mr. Cezanne. I didn't hear an answer to that question. We agree that 5 commissioners would be beneficial. The Port Commission agrees and the County Commission agrees. As Commissioner Downing said, we are up against a deadline. That is, if the port rushes forward with the proposed vote. And as Commissioner Downing said, the hard part is getting it past the voters. And Commissioner Menzer, of course, agrees that is the hard part and that we have a better chance if we work on it together. So I am still baffled about why the rush when we have a better chance of meeting that high bar of communicating well with the voters if we do this together with the county. So sorry, I don't know what the answer to your question is, Mr. Cezanne. I still don't know what the rush is.
Thank you, Commissioner. How about you, Commissioner McGregor? Any comment?
No, I would just support a lot of what Commissioner Downing just relayed to everybody. You know, this is going to be a voter issue, and I think we need to put it before the voters and let them decide where we go. And I think that we have already expressed a willingness to work with the county commissioners and putting together what 5 districts may look like using some of their experts within their own council, their GIS person or whoever else might be involved. And Mary Hall, the state auditor, has volunteered in a email we saw that she would be willing to sit down with the chair of the Port Commission and the chair of the County Commission and work on what 5 districts would look like. So I think it's the right time to do it because I think that at this point, we've already got 2 commissioners up for election. We put a 3rd item on the ballot. It reduces the amount of cost to us. And then moving forward, a 5-member board would be the appropriate thing so that there is equal representation because the districts will be broken up by population base. And so therefore, some districts will shrink dramatically because districts 1, 2, and 3 are more centrally located in the cities of Olympia, Lacey, and Tumwater. But South County would then have representation both on the commission and hopefully on the Thurston County Commission as well at some point in the very near future. Thank you.
To be fair, we don't want to misrepresent County Auditor Hall's generous offer to help us with this process. Her offer is certainly contingent upon the county having available to them the data that is needed to do this work. And those data will not be available by the deadline that Commissioner Downing envisions.
Nonetheless, she has offered.
Thank you, commissioners, for your response to public comment. So we're going to move on to commissioner reports and discussion. Commissioners McGregor or Zeta, do you have anything to discuss tonight?
I don't have anything to discuss. I don't know that I cover this under other business, but I failed in the start of the commission meeting when the executive director was giving her report that I wanted to take the opportunity to welcome Lisa Parks onto our staff. And I've known her for many years in different capacities throughout the port industry. And I think she comes to us. We're very fortunate to have her join us. And I'm looking forward to her valuable input as we continue to move forward as a port in this community. So welcome, Lisa, and looking forward to meeting and seeing you again soon.
Thank you for that testimonial, Commissioner McGregor. Commissioner Zeta, do you have anything? Sorry, you're muted, Commissioner Zeta.
I attended the Capital Lake Deschutes Estuary briefing this morning as the port's representative to the EIS process. And wow, they have done a lot of work and they gave a terrific presentation. They evaluated the three alternatives, the three action alternatives, managed lake, estuary, or hybrid. Over 14, they did 14 analyses. Hydrodynamics and sediment transport was a big one. Navigation, water quality, invasive species, fish and wildlife, wetlands, air quality, land use and recreation, cultural resources, what's it going to look like, visual resources, environmental health, transportation, public services and utilities, and economics. And they have gone in depth on all 14 of these areas, and their methodology and their findings have been reviewed by independent experts. Some of the key findings are that with the lake, that's where we get the most, if we keep a lake, that's where we get the most flooding. With the hybrid, that's where we would get the most sediment deposition. With the estuary, that would be the cheapest alternative and the best water quality. That is the short answer. And there are lots of details online. I strongly recommend that you both read the executive summary. It's not that long, and it gives a good overview of the main areas. And we will be getting a briefing, of course, next week on some of the details, probably the same briefing from DES and Floyd Snyder. They did a great job of answering questions, and the public process is ongoing. Public comment is being accepted into next month. If you go online, just Google Capital Lake Deschutes Estuary, you will find the information and you will find out how you can offer public comment. If either of my fellow commissioners have questions about this, I may be able to answer, or we can get them answered next week.
Thanks, Commissioner Zeta, for that great report. I look forward to that presentation next week and take your suggestions under advisement. I don't have anything to report. Is there any other business tonight before we go to meeting announcements? Okay, very well. Can I see the meeting announcements, please, Tracy? Okay, we have our next week commission work session, 2:30 p.m. on July 19th. And the following week, July 26th, 5:30, regularly scheduled commission meeting. And then out to August 2nd, regular scheduled commission work session, I believe. And thank you. And with that, I'd like to ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to adjourn. We are adjourned. Thank you very much, everybody. Good meeting.